Hello, Greater Love. My name is Sister Tracy Holmes Brazil, and I am here today in honor of Lieutenant Colonel Robert Bob Pittard. What can I say about Colonel Pittard? He just became a father figure to me. He loved me unconditionally, and sometimes that included saying things to me that I was not happy about. But that's who he was, and so I honor his memory for that. And one of the things that many of the Greater Love members that know him will remember about him is that he always would greet you by your name. If he knew your name, he was going to greet you by your name. And then he would walk in and take his seat promptly because that's what he was accustomed to as a military man that served for 20 years. He really was so practical and pragmatic in his advisement to young people. And people, because sometimes he was quiet, so people didn't always approach him, because in true colonel fashion, he carried himself like a colonel. And so sometimes that could, make people think that he wasn't as social and personable as he was. But once you got to know him and talk to him, number one, he was a giver. He would, share his advice, his expertise, his money, his time with you. And that's actually how I met him. We were laughing and talking about student loan debt. One of the younger members and I, and anybody that, kind of has been around Greater Love for a while knows that our elders really hold a special place in our hearts. And so it's never uncommon for them to ear hustle on those conversations and then interject. And so he did exactly that. And we then began to talk about budgeting. He's like, well, what's your budget? I know that you have this child and you need to have a budget because I know you're a career woman. And so that really started the journey for us, becoming, he really just became my father figure. So if there was something that I wanted to talk about, it started out, with financial means and how was I going to save for my daughter's college education and for, purchasing a home. And he just took it at heart. He started researching. He got all this information about what I could do to be able to secure money for my daughter for college. And then along the way, I began to learn a lot about his life and his service. And so I would always joke with him because he retired in 1970 and I was born in 1970. And so I would always tell him, you've been retired as long as I've been alive. And so, but we just shared that kind of camaraderie. One thing about him that he was really a sportsman. He loved sports. He loved bowling and he took it seriously. And here I am, not taking it seriously, and he was not happy about that. And every time I had the opportunity, which just was a couple of times, less than a handful of times, that I had the opportunity to bowl, my daughter had a party because she, got to like bowling too. And so she had a party and he showed up. He came and then he was giving tips on where to stand and how to hold the ball correctly. See, and it showed me how much he really loved that sport, and told us about these television tournaments. And so in addition to his life as a colonel and all that I'm sure he had to endure in that position as an African American man at the time that he was a colonel, and living on Fort Bliss, which if you've never been to El Paso, I mean, Fort Bliss just encompasses, half of the city. And so He talked about his time on Fort Bliss. He talked about the initiatives that he was able to implement, one of which was centered around youth and children, because he had children. He was a father, and he was so proud of his three children. He has a daughter and two sons. One is an attorney, and the other is Dana is a major general in the United States Army. And so he was so proud of all three of his children and his grandchildren. And I am proud that he included me in that number. And funny story, when I, met my husband, my now husband, Colonel Petard, I did not know this, but he introduced himself to Deacon Brazil, and then he, gave him some pretty stern marching orders about what he needed to do to make sure that he was taking good care of me. And so, he loved me unconditionally, and he fought for the things that were important to me in my life. When I would stray from those goals or, things that I had told him that I wanted to accomplish, he would dig in. And so one of those things was, I want to buy a house. And so the first year he just, okay, show me the numbers. And so I showed him the numbers. We went through all of that. And then I kind of, let it go to the back burner because, as Ashley's mother, I was navigating that too. And he let that year almost pass. And then he said, remember, we have a plan. And so what are you going to do to get to that goal? And so he reminded me of that. And gratefully, I listened and I took that advice and was able to become a homeowner, largely because, number one, he did what he always did, and he researched and found those resources, found a program that, I could, learn more about the process, what was necessary if I wanted to purchase a new construction, or if I wanted to purchase an existing home. So there was just so many things that he gave me advice on throughout the time that he was here at Greater Love. And when he became sick and I would go to his home and talk to him, he just poured a lot of wisdom into me about things that had happened throughout his lifetime, and things that perhaps he wanted to do differently, but that he didn't regret anything. And so the important thing to know was that you learn from every opportunity. You take every opportunity to learn, and sometimes you're not going to get it right, but you always have the opportunity to go back and try to make it right. And although we joked, his younger son and I joked once about, an apology. He didn't really apologize, and I said, no, he didn't really apologize, but he did let me know that he understood that maybe that word was a little too stern for me, or that he recognized that, I may have had a hurt feeling and that type of thing. And so, in his demeanor, his stern demeanor, he also had a softness. And so I think that that's the thing that I remember the most about him. And I know that those in Greater Love that knew Colonel Petard loved him because, he could crack a joke with the best of them, and he could take a joke too, because I wear this white blazer today in honor of his white shoes. And so he would have on his white shoes, and sometimes some of the men would joke with him about it, and he'd laugh just as heartily. But let me tell you, if there was something amiss, he could give as well as he could take. And so he had a sharp sense of humor. He was super intelligent. So much. I'm a history buff, and he was a history buff, and that was something that we connected on. And he loved the outdoors, And so I too love the outdoors, and we were connected to that. So I learned a lot from him, and I know that many others in Greater Love learned a lot from Colonel Petard. And so it is really an honor and a privilege today to represent on behalf of Lieutenant Colonel Robert Petard.
My name is Iris Hawkins. Here to honor my husband, Ronald Hawkins, Deacon Ronald Hawkins. We have been married for 47 years. We have 3 lovely kids, and we joined the church in 1998. He went into the he was serving in the United States Air Force, and he came out as a master sergeant, and he traveled Thailand, and that's where he got his Agent Orange, and he was a deacon here at Greater Love Church, and he was over the men's choir for years. So he was a great man. Everybody knew him as Boo because he called it everybody Boo, but he was a wonderful person. And he traveled in different places. He was born in New Orleans, Louisiana, and he passed away March 10, 2021. I think he was a great person. He was a great leader. He was a great tutor to different kids. Everybody, like I said, everybody loved him. You can go to him for anything that you needed, and he will help you. He will sit down and talk to you, and he will mentor you. He was just a good person.
Talk about Deacon Hawkins as a family man.
He was a family man. Like I said, I have 3 kids, 5 grand boys, and he was just a good person. Yes, when he come to Greater Love, he was a sharp dresser, and he was so polished outside, but he was so sick inside, and no one knew this. For years and years and years, he had Agent Orange, and this is how it all started. But he would smile and keep going, and he was always nice to people. He would, like I said, he would help anyone who he could. Just being with him for 47 years of marriage, and we prayed together, and just being here at Greater Love. He was just loving the brotherhood, and they loved him, and he just, it was something that he really liked. His dad was a brotherhood too. His dad was a deacon, and he was just following his dad's footsteps. Is that what you're saying? He liked the men's choir the most. That's what thank you. At first when he started at Greater Love, he was a usher. And then when he was getting sick, as time went on, his sickness was progressing. He couldn't stand anymore. So he had to stop, doing that. And then he joined the men's choir. And that's what he liked the most. So, and then he became over the men's choir. And that's what he really loved in Greater Love, doing here in Greater Love. Thank you. They named him after the men's choir. His name is, the men's choir is Deacon Hawkins, Ronald Hawkins Choir now. It is so. And he was the Man of the Year, 2020, I think. I think it was the Man of the Year. He's just a wonderful person all around. Everybody, like I said, I can't say it too often, everybody loves him because of his personality. And he was a giving person. He was a loving person. He loved Greater Love. He loved all the brotherhood here in the church. He was just, and everybody called him Boo. He would say Boo to them, and they would call him Boo back, so that's really what I could say about him.
I'm Sister Jolie Shelton. I'm the wife to Henry A. Shelton, the mother to Stacy Shelton, Markage. And I'm a member here at Greater Love Missionary Baptist Church, and Reverend Gillespie is my pastor and will always be my pastor. And I'm a Christian. I love everybody.
Visuals. I am the daughter of Sister Jolie Shelton, and I have a unique position where I'm honoring both my dad and my uncle, which is my mom's brother and my mom's husband. So Henry Arthur Shelton became a member of Greater Love Missionary Baptist Church around 2005. He wasn't an attender because when he became a member of Greater Love Missionary Baptist Church, he was already sick and he was unable to travel to church. However, he was a participant indirectly because he had a daughter and a mama who were present with him during those years and brought Greater Love to him. One of the unique memories that I will always remember about this experience with my dad being a member of Greater Love is that he would go in the hospital sometimes because he had suffered a stroke, and Pastor Gillespie, no matter what time, no matter what day, no matter what hour, he would come into the hospital room and give my dad comfort, peace, and that's one of the greatest memories that I will always carry on from this point. Let's go ahead and talk about his service. He served in the United States Army for 4 years, and then he converted over to the United States Air Force, where he served 20 years. 20 plus years?
Yeah, but when he was in the Army, he joined in 1952 and did a stint of 4 years, and then after that, he re-upped with the Air Force.
Okay. So
1956.
I'm not going to dates, Mom.
Well, that's what you told me they needed.
No, I didn't say you they needed the dates, Mom. I said you wanted the dates.
Oh,
So he did 4 years,
4 years in the Army,
and then 20
years in the Air Force.
And then he
no,
did
22
20 years
years in the Air Force and 20 years.
20 plus
civil-
what?
20 plus 2 years.
So
Air
22
Force.
years.
And then did 20 years civil service.
So a
Out in
total
Canada.
of 46 years of government service. My dad served 46 years of governmental service, and that is impressive in and of itself. One of my favorite sayings about my dad, and one of the things I will tie into scripture, is that he said there's 2 things in life that he's going to have to do: be black and die, right? And so I liken that to the Father being the Alpha and the Omega. He understood his beginning, and he knew where he was going to serve his end. And that's about Henry Arthur Shelton.
All I can say back then was that as he became very ill, I would go home from church on Sundays and I would ask him, "You want Pastor to come? Do you want to join Greater Love Baptist Church?" And he'd say, yeah. I said, "You want Pastor to come to the house and give you the right hand of fellowship?" Yeah. So when I came and asked Pastor about it, he readily accepted, and he came to the house and gave my husband the right hand of fellowship. And after that, he still wasn't able to attend service because he couldn't walk or anything, and everything had to be done by wheelchair. And he started tithing, and that was one of the great things that he did after that. And every month he was tithing until his condition got worse. One thing about him also was that he loved his children. He liked to tease a lot. He liked to dance with them and stuff like that. But he was a father to them as well. That's really about it there when he was on his bed of affliction.
Now, again, I had a favorite uncle. He was my only uncle that I was able to know, and his name was Robert McVeigh. Is there a middle name? Robert Clarence McVeigh.
Uncle Robert, that's what I call him. He joined Greater Love Missionary Baptist Church probably back in 1987 when we were at Hackberry. And he served intermittently. He would come in and he served on the usher board, and then he left for a little short period of time and was on his way coming back around 97 when he was diagnosed with cancer, and that prohibited him from coming back to serve further at Greater Love Missionary Baptist Church. One of my fondest memories that I have of my Uncle Robert serving Greater Love is that we had Salute to the Nations that we had experienced, I believe, in Greater Love annually, and he walked me down. And I remember that because he was the first man that told me I was beautiful. And that was his love for me, that God had loved him, and he gave it indiscriminate. Oh, I didn't know I was going to be emotional about this. He distributed onto me. And, oh, got it. And that is one of the things I will always remember about my Uncle Robert, that he knew how to love, and he got it innately, and he learned it through Greater Love, and he was able to serve under his nephew in his guidance, in his so when I think about Dad and what he could offer to the young men of the church, Dad was committed. He wasn't a perfect man, but he was perfectly committed to doing what he needed to do and be responsible, by tithing, like Mama said, monthly. So if there is anything that he can give in terms of wisdom to the young youth men, and as well as women as too, is to be consistently committed to the greater good. Now, Uncle Robert,
But I'm a sister to Robert McVeigh, the brother who was in the military.
he served in the United States Air Force, okay, United States Army for over
Over 20 some odd years.
20 some odd years. And that's my mama talking. Since he's my uncle, I just have what I know of him. So, Mom, what do you think that Uncle Robert could have shared with the youth of today with his servanthood for being committed to the military?
Oh, he was very, very committed to the military. He did what he was supposed to do. You can say it to a certain extent according to the book, but other than that, his own knowledge. And if he had to reprimand somebody, he would do it, but he would do it in the state of love. My brother loved everybody. He was a type, loving person at home with the children and his wife as well. By no means was he perfect. Nobody's perfect, but when it came to home and his children, and he was just next to none, because he cared very much and loved his family. Not just them, but his siblings and my mom and dad. He was just that type of person. That was my brother, and we used to get into a lot as kids together, but he was just like that. That was just him.
He was
In his
also
military life, I saw him reprimand a GI one time. His wife and I went out there, and the guy didn't do what he was supposed to do, and he let him have it. And I felt embarrassed for the man, but he did what he had to do. But he was just like that. He was just a strong military and a strong homebody father.
appropriate and in order. That was Uncle Robert. He was disciplined. He was in order, and he would hold you accountable to what was appropriate, right? So he was just that universally, and that's what I remember about him, is that he was very disciplined, and he required, it wasn't an option to go into your own way of thoughts. It was the rules based. I stayed in order.
Arthur P. Walker. Arthur Walker joined the U.S. Army in 1978 and then the U.S. Army Reserves in 1984. While in the Army, he worked as a gunnery loading tanks. He received several medals, including Qualified Sharpshooter. Arthur was a devoted man, and after his detachment from the U.S. Army, he served in the U.S. Army Reserves and worked for the Pacific Railroad. Many things he contributed to during his life: a devoted husband, father, and a friend to many. One thing that stood out most about him was his membership in the Greater Love Church. Whether he was feeling good or not, you would never know it. When he reached the grounds of the Greater Love Church, he was committed to come to church regardless of his condition. Arthur loved God. He loved the Greater Love Church. He loved his pastor, Reverend L.J. Gillespie Sr. Thank you, Arthur, for your service and your devotion.
Deacon Arthur Jerome Delaware was a United States Army private who honorably served during the Vietnam War. Deacon Delaware was born on October 3, 1945. Deacon Arthur Jerome Delaware was a United States Army private who honorably served during the Vietnam War. Deacon Delaware was born on October 3, 1945, and transitioned to heavenly rest on December 30th, 2006. Deacon Delaware is noted for being a family man. He was a loving brother to his siblings and also a cherished father to his sons, members Daniel and David Delaware. Deacon Delaware was known for being an entrepreneur. In 2006, he opened a restaurant called the Sausage House. Just prior to his passing, Deacon Delaware preached his first sermon at the Greater Love Missionary Baptist Church and, during the same year, became an ordained minister. Of all his works, Reverend Delaware's faithful service to his beloved pastor, the Reverend Dr. Lester James Gillespie Sr., and his church family, the Greater Love Missionary Baptist Church, speaks. Without his tireless contributions to serve us and ensure our strength, we would not be where we are today. Reverend Arthur Jerome Delaware, we thank you, and we honor your legacy. Well done, thou good and faithful servant.